Today I want to talk about nature's secret weight loss weapon and why it's so powerful for women over 40. Plus, the 8 top mistakes I see people making that keep them from using this secret weapon to lose weight and boost their metabolism. You definitely want to watch this entire video until the end because I'm going to be sharing my tips, hacks, and of course my favorite supplements that I oftentimes recommend to clients who need more support. May Tom here. I'm a functional medicine dietitian and I love helping women over 40 optimize their metabolism, hormones, and health span. Definitely, if you haven't already, download my free must-have food guide for boosting your metabolism. I am terrible at keeping secrets. So what is this secret weight loss weapon that we've been given by God? It is somnos, which in Latin stands for, you guessed it, sleep. This is also where we get the word insomnia from. I did not take 5 years of Latin for nothing. Come on. And my dad said it was a complete waste of time. So somnus or sleep, why is it nature's secret weight loss weapon? Well, let's go into the research. One randomized crossover study took 10 overweight participants and put them on a calorie restricted diet for 14 days and then put them in either a 5.5 hour sleep category or an 8-hour sleep category. And the results were profound. The people who ended up sleeping 5.5 hours had 55% less weight loss. The people who slept 5.5 hours also had unfavorable hormone adaptations, more hunger, and number 3, less calories burned from fat. Super interesting, right? Other studies have also found that chronic patterns of sleep less than 6 hours a night was associated with a higher BMI, body mass index, and short sleep is also associated with more eating, more late night eating, more snacking. Also, in terms of food choices, more preference for fatty foods, processed foods, and sugar. Another meta-analysis looked at 13 different studies spanning over 300,000 participants and found that those who had short sleep, less than 6 hours of sleep a night, or long sleep, more than 8 hours of sleep per night, had an increased correlation with an expanded waistline, which no female wants ever. But more importantly, it correlated with metabolic syndrome, which is having 3 out of the 5 following. A waist circumference greater than 40 inches for males, greater than 34.6 for females, triglycerides over 150, HDL, which is your good cholesterol, under 40 for men, under 50 for women, blood pressure higher than 130 over 85, fasting glucose over 100. So if you have 3 out of 5 of those, you have an increased risk for diabetes, cardiovascular events, and strokes. Not cool. Unfortunately, as women approach menopause, our risk for these 3 automatically go up. So it's interesting that having sleep within that ideal window between 6 to 8 hours is going to decrease your risk for metabolic syndrome. To be clear, sleep doesn't just affect metabolism. They did a study and found out that women who have more awakenings at night actually have a higher risk of developing something called CSVD, cerebral small vessel disease, which is the leading cause of functional loss, disability, and cognitive decline in the elderly. I don't know anyone that wants to put those things on their bucket list. So quick interlude about somnus that's not so science heavy before we dive into the 8 mistakes I commonly see people make. So somnus is the noun sleep in Latin. To sleep, the infinitive, is actually dormire in Latin, which means to rest. And I love this quote from Tricia Hershey, who wrote the book Rest is Resistance, a Manifesto. And she says, we must believe we are worthy of rest. We don't have to earn it. It is our birthright. It is one of our most ancient and primal needs. Unfortunately, women struggle with sleep issues more than men, especially during times of hormonal fluctuations such as puberty, pregnancy, and menopause. So it is that much more important for us females to fight to use this secret weapon than men. So let's get into the 8 most common mistakes I see people make. The first 3 I think are pretty obvious, so I'm going to go through them quickly, but they're worth mentioning. Number 1, eating too close to bedtime. Number 2, taking naps that are too long or too late. And number 3, having caffeine either too much or too late. Number 1, when it comes to eating too late, we know that when the sun goes down, we really should all be making more and more melatonin. Melatonin actually makes us insulin resistant. So that is actually the worst time to have food on board because you are the least efficient at processing the sugar that's coming from the carbohydrates of that meal. The other thing about eating late is it can predispose certain people to heartburn, which we know is terrible for sleep. For all of the above reasons, we really want to move our last bite of food food away from when our head hits the pillow at least 3 hours apart. Number 2, naps. If you feel groggy or you can't go to sleep at night, that nap either is too long or too late in the day. You might have to either shorten the nap, move it earlier, or just nick it altogether. Now, naps can be strategic to catch up on sleep, but if you are doing a lot of catch up on the weekends, for instance, it's showing that you aren't getting enough sleep during the week. So that's feedback to pay attention to. Number 3, caffeine. Yes, genetically, we like to see if you are a good metabolizer of caffeine because that tells us whether or not coffee is more beneficial to you or less beneficial. But at the end of the day, if you take coffee out or you take caffeine out and you sleep better, you put it back in, you don't sleep as well, that's also something to pay attention to. So experiment for you. I know for me, I can have matcha during the day. I can't drink matcha before bed. Coffee, I've got to do decaf. And remember, decaf coffee can have up to 30% as much caffeine as the original. So it's not completely a zero caffeine product. Okay, mistake number 4. This is a big one for a lot of my clients who either own vineyards, invest in wineries, or live and love going to areas like Napa or Temecula, in California anyways. You've guessed it, the mistake is alcohol. Alcohol is a sedative. It can help you wind down and fall asleep easier, and a lot of people use it as a sleep aid. And unfortunately, alcohol is also known to cause something called REM rebound, which is when your brain waves kind of spike and wake you up in the early morning hours. And a lot of people have a hard time falling back asleep. My best recommendation is slap on a sleep tracker of some sort, either an Apple Watch or I like to use Whoop. People like the Oura Ring as well. When my clients see with their own eyes, their own data and go, holy cow, whenever I drink, my deep sleep goes down or my total sleep goes down. Yes, that is just proof in the pudding. Now, I have had clients who purposely don't wear their Whoop when they're out socializing, having drinks, because they know how bad the data is going to look the next day. Just note that if you're using alcohol to fall asleep, you're actually maybe not doing yourself a favor when it comes to getting the right type of sleep and enough sleep. I'm going to link below my Whoop affiliate link because you can do a 30-day free trial and try it out for yourself. Mistake number 5 is using a first-generation antihistamine such as Benadryl, Advil PM, Alka-Seltzer with cold medicine, NyQuil, cold and flu, one of those, to fall asleep. Unfortunately, you will be building a tolerance to these over time, so you're going to need to take more and more to get the same effect. Also, there are side effects such as dizziness, nausea, drowsiness, balance and coordination issues, ringing in the ears, plus a whole lot more. But the worst one is if you're over 65, turns out using these first generation antihistamines for a long period of time actually block your brain's ability to use acetylcholine, which sets you up for dementia. Not cool. Just because it's over the counter doesn't mean it's completely harmless, and this is not what these first generation antihistamines were supposed to be used for anyways. Now, if you're taking a prescription sleeping pill, yes, there's a time and place where a doctor will recommend it, but just know that there are side effects, and the classic one is sleepwalking with something like Ambien. Funniest story is I had a client who traveled a lot for work and one day found himself in the middle of the night locked out of his hotel room, completely naked. Embarrassing! So embarrassing. That was the last time he took Ambien, obviously. Even though that's a funny story, not so funny is there have been people who have literally walked out of second-story windows and accidentally ended their lives because of, again, sleepwalking. So, again, not to scare you, but just know that there, if you could do it natural, try all means to do it natural first before you have to go towards a prescription sleeping pill. Number 6 mistake I see people make that rob them of their ability to use this weight loss secret weapon called sleep is using a blue light device to wind down for the evening, whether that's watching Netflix on an iPad, reading on a Kindle, scrolling through social media on your phone, or just watching television. We know that blue light exposure is great during the day to help us focus, to help us stay awake, but it's terrible at night because it does interfere with our body's ability to make melatonin. There are obviously ways you can go around minimizing blue light. You can definitely use something like Night Shift on an Apple device where you can create warmer tones on your phone, take out the blue light at the time as the day goes on. I like telling my clients to use a program on their desktop called f.lux, which is great to also help pull out red light if you don't have an Apple device. Kindles, the paper white versions, have the least amount of blue light. You can also use something called blue shade on that device where you can again make the tones more warm. And then lastly, one of my favorite, if you have to work late or be on a device, is using blue blocking glasses, not the kind that are just built into your glasses that have a blue glare. In the past, I recommended a different brand, but I recently have come across an even better brand, which are Vivarays. These are actually prescriptions, so I am not loving these right now because I'm wearing contacts, but these are great. Sometimes I have to be on a Zoom at night. I always wear these. If I'm putting my kids down and it's in the evening times and they have to turn on the light to use the restroom and brush their teeth, all those things, I am always wearing my orange blue blocking glasses, and I'll link those below. You can even buy night lights around the house in an orange or red color, and I love using Himalayan salt lamps at night as well. So anytime you can take the blue out and add the red in, that's better for sleep. Seventh mistake I see people making that really rob them of the opportunity to use sleep as the magic weight loss pill that was given to us is tolerating or suffering through a sleep disrupting loved one, whether that's a pet who barks at night at every noise in the house or needs to be let out, a snoring spouse, or a kid who is not well sleep trained and may not be a newborn anymore, or even caretaking for a loved one who needs to be checked on it. In this category, I would say do what is in your control to guard your sleep. Funny story is, there was a sleep professor who came to the spa I worked at who was actually on the forefront of making sleep apnea known to the public. And he shared this story. He said he had a patient who snored so bad that him and his wife bought houses next to each other and spent time together in one house during the day and slept in separate houses at night. And that solved their sleep issues. That's not always within everyone's budget. So again, do what you can. Last personal story, which is quite interesting, is I remember being a young child, always having nightmares and running across the hall to my parents' room, jumping on their bed, waking them up. And I remember my dad telling me, if you do that one more time, I am locking you in the garage to sleep tonight. I remember contemplating, what do I do? What do I do? I'm so scared. And yes, I got locked in the garage. Maybe it was just for 5 minutes. I never did it again. So it worked. So whatever form of sleep training you need to do to get a full night's rest, do it. As long as it's not illegal, as long as they're not traumatized, and it doesn't harm your conscience. Remember, we get to exercise our birthright to sleep. This is an ancient primal need that we don't need to earn. We get to guard it. By the way, comment down below if you've ever gained weight when you were sleep deprived caring for a newborn. And I'm curious, did that weight ever go back to normal after you got a full night's rest again? The last and final mistake, number 8, is letting a medically based sleep disruptor go unaddressed. This includes sleep apnea. A lot of people are undiagnosed, especially females. Restless leg syndrome, night sweats related to menopause. Number 4, chronic pain. And lastly, stress or anxiety that keeps you up at night. Now, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to give you the medically based answers, but I do want to tell you there are natural things that I have used in my practice that could support in these areas, and I'll go through them briefly. Remember, you still want to run these by a practitioner, and ideally you are being medically supervised if you have these issues. Number 1, sleep apnea. There was a study done, very preliminary, but promising, that showed with mild obstructive sleep apnea, mouth taping actually improved snoring and improved the quality of sleep. Obviously, if you have severe sleep apnea and you've been prescribed a CPAP, you still probably want to be using that CPAP. And there are so many of my clients who, when they got over the fact that they look like Darth Vader, they actually love their CPAP because they can feel the difference. The other thing with sleep apnea that I hear a lot from my patients is when you back off the sedatives, you actually get less of that collapsing of the throat, less obstruction, better muscle tone. So backing off sedatives like alcohol is helpful for sleep apnea. Also, sleeping on your side potentially could help. But again, a lot of people who have sleep apnea are mouth breathers, and we know that mouth breathing does make sleep apnea worse. Now, if you have night sweats, again, that's telling me that your hormones are in flux. Low estrogen causes your temperature regulation to be off, and sometimes we will use, outside of hormone therapy, which also is on the table, go bioidentical always. A lot of women will use estrogen patches, right? And that needs to be prescribed, but you can use some supplements. Some of my favorite are going to be things like black cohosh, Siberian rhubarb, adaptogens, and also things like breath work. With restless leg syndrome, the first thing I look for is checking for iron deficiency. There are studies that show supplementing with iron can relieve or alleviate restless leg. Chronic pain. This is a big one. A lot of people suffer through chronic pain and don't want to be addicted to opioids. If you have chronic pain, these are my top 3 go-tos. I love acupuncture. I love red light therapy. I love the Flexbeam specifically. I'll link that below. And also things like CBD. Now, with anxiety and stress, if you're a female approaching menopause, you might be actually suffering from low progesterone, which could be causing more anxiety, more early morning awakenings. Again, not diagnosing, but you will want to be prescribed oral bioidentical progesterone if that applies to you. And a lot of women find that it helps them sleep better and they're less anxious overall. Now, aside from that, with stress and anxiety, I tend to go to aromatherapy. I love using Lavella, which is a lavender oil that you can ingest. I love Relax Max by Zymogen. I love Cortisol Manager. We used to use that a lot in the clinic. I love FX Chocolate Exhale, which has a good amount of L-theanine in it, which is wonderful for relaxing. And sometimes I also use phosphatidylserine in the evening. So I've shared a lot of my tips, hacks, and even supplements related to protecting somnus, which is one of your best secret weapons for weight loss and metabolism. But I want to share with you my personal top 3 supplements that I kind of rotate through my arsenal when it comes to supporting sleep. Here we go. My first one is magnesium. I do like Magnesium Breakthrough by BioOptimizers. I'll link them as well. But one that's very, very common to find is Calm, which comes in powdered form. You can put it in a drink, and I love the raspberry lemon one. That's my favorite. My second go-to is Dream, which is another FX chocolate one that has 5 HTP, 100 milligrams of, and melatonin 3 milligrams per chocolate square. So it's a nice little treat before bed that doesn't actually have any sugar in it, has allulose, and you have a built-in supplement that's also really pleasurable. So this one is ProSom. This is a melatonin-free supplement that some people just don't feel good on melatonin. And by the way, if melatonin makes you kind of groggy in the morning, it's not because you took too much melatonin, it's because you don't detox melatonin well. So anyways, ProSom is a melatonin-free supplement by Integrative Therapeutics. And then last but not least, one that I've been loving is by Troscriptions, which is a troche that you put in your cheek between your gum and your lip, and you kind of just let it dissolve. And one looks like this, but you can cut it with a pill cutter. And so I literally just take a quarter of it, and man, it totally works for me. And the nice thing about a troche is it doesn't go through the gut, past the liver to activate. It goes really straight into, you get brain effects of it faster. Of course, I'll link all the supplements below. And again, remember, you need a pill cutter. You don't want to just pop a whole one the first time because you might want to start off slow and add. So those are my top 4 supplements that I love, love, love for sleep. What are yours? I'd love to hear. Give this video a like if it was helpful, and I can't wait to see you next time.